So this is kind of a fun video, and I kind of wish I had one of my doctor friends here to kind of talk more about this, but alas, you're stuck with me. So what does it mean to flatten the curve? So we're talking about COVID-19 here in respect to the mean and the standard deviation of a normal distribution. So COVID-19 is highly contagious and easily spread. In the early days of the worldwide COVID-19 pandemic, government and health officials were urging everyone to isolate and social distance in the interest of flattening the curve. So consider this graph. And so when we talk about flattening the curve, you can see like this is what we were going for. We were trying to flatten the curve to make it so it wasn't quite so spiky. Now, which curve? You'll notice that the red curve, that is spiky in my words, that's without protective measures, just living in the world like we do willy-nilly. The other one, which is like the dotted line, that's with protective measures. So that's isolating, that's wearing masks, that kind of thing. So which curve would have the highest numbers of active cases at one time? Well, the number of active cases is the frequency. So it's very easy to see that that spiky one, which is without protective measures, that would have the highest number of cases at one time, which that makes sense. Which curve would have the highest standard deviation? Well, remember that standard deviation talks about the spread, like the spread of data. Which one of these has the bigger spread of data? Well, that's this low one. So that's with protective measures has the higher standard deviation because it's more spread out. It's not all grouped around one thing. Now, some people felt that protective measures were overemphasized. They thought we should develop herd immunity, right? Everybody get it, maybe or maybe not survive, and then we can move on. So they say because without protective measures, that's the red spiky one, remember, the curve ends sooner because the curve kind of ends here, whereas with protective measures, it lasts longer. So, questions at the bottom here. Consider the role of the dotted horizontal line. That's this one here. What does this line represent? Well, if you notice in the key, that dotted line is the capacity of the healthcare system. This is where it gets tricky, and this was part of the point of trying to flatten the curve. So, if you look at without protective measures, you can see that for a big chunk of time, we are operating above the capacity of the healthcare system, which I think we all heard a lot about that. So flattening the curve, yes, people might say, well, it takes longer to like get past this. And while that might be true, we also are not exceeding the ability of the healthcare system. And so it's important to think about if our healthcare system is maxed out and we're operating in this piece, if you get sick, and I'm not talking about COVID, what if you have a heart attack? The healthcare system is already maxed out. There's no room for you. And this is where we kind of got into that little, what do we do with this? The second question down here, letter B, would flattening the curve in your community mean the same thing as flattening the curve in another? And this is kind of a tricky question, but it really kind of depends on what your community, or where your community is. Are you in a rural area? Are you in a urban area? Like I live downtown Indianapolis. I have multiple hospitals pretty close to me. Like within 3 miles, I think I have 4 different hospitals. So like if I came down with COVID-19 or if I had a heart attack, I have multiple places that I could go. So if one of them was maxed out, maybe one of the other ones had room. If you are in a small town with no hospital and one doctor's office, can you imagine if everybody is struggling at the same time? Where do you go? Right? So flattening the curve, like the idea is the same for everyone. The idea of flattening the curve is we want to make sure that the sick people have the ability to be helped because our healthcare system is not maxed out. That is the goal. But depending on where you live and what's happening, also there's a lot of people that live in Indianapolis, which means There's more chance of people getting sick. So there's just a lot of different pieces that go into that. But the basic idea, does it mean the same thing? Yes, you're trying to protect people. You're trying to allow those that are sick to have access to health care and not overmax the healthcare system. But there might be some other variables that go into that. So I don't know that there's a right or wrong answer to this. It really depends on what's your perspective, where do you live, what are the different variables that you're looking at. So hopefully that kind of just helps think through that a little bit. And hopefully we don't have to deal with that again.